BYU football, week 2, as the Cougars get ready to take on the SMU Mustangs, now members of the ACC. It's a Power 4 matchup. 2 years ago, this was Independence versus AAC. Now it's in the big bad Power 4. And joining me now to get an insider look at the SMU Mustangs, it's Dean Ralsky from On the Pony Express, part of the On3 network. Dean, thanks for taking the time to join me. This should be a pretty good ball game.
Of course. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, looking forward to this one Friday night here in Dallas.
What are you expecting from the crowd to look like on Friday night?
I think the crowd will be great. SMU had their home opener in week 1 against Houston Christian on Saturday, and they had a really nice turnout. Students showed up wearing all white. Of course, this Friday, SMU will be showcasing their new red jerseys, so students and fans will be wearing red. You know, of course, here in Texas and all over the country, Friday nights is normally high school football night, but this coming Friday in Dallas, it'll be college football, so I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think it's awesome that this is a Power 4 matchup now. I feel like SMU's always deserved to be a Power Conference team dating back to their history in the Southwest Conference days, and now members of the ACC. It's getting a pulse over the last 13 months on social media. It feels like there's been a lot of excitement, but can you give us a sense of what this means for SMU football to be back in a Power Conference?
Oh, absolutely. It means a lot. And SMU feels like they deserve to be here, going all the way back to the 80s when they had their success. And then, of course, the death penalty came and they got hit. And they've had to work their way back up to this moment. And so it's been a long road back between donors and success on the football field and growing as a university. It's all come at the right time for the Mustangs, and SMU is super excited to be back in the Power 4, but also specifically in the ACC.
Mustangs are 2-0 on the game, and week 0, I remember watching that whole game. I've watched both games back to back, and that week 0 game, I think for many, probably including yourself maybe, just was a big surprise because Nevada was the preseason Mountain West Conference cellar dweller pick, and SMU had to work for a full 60 minutes. What do you feel like you've learned about this SMU squad through 2 games this season?
Yeah, well, SMU is one of many teams who use the transfer portal a lot, getting a bunch of new faces through the Power 4, Power 5 ranks, both on the offensive and defensive line. And so it was tough to gauge what we would see from SMU, but also what Nevada would look like. They're under, new coaching with Jeff Choate being the first year there at Nevada. So it was tough to gauge what we would see from the Wolfpack. And I think SMU had to learn kind of as they went on in that game. And so, yes, they did struggle early on. The offense didn't quite get into a rhythm there until late in the third quarter into the fourth quarter. But once that fourth quarter came, SMU won that final quarter 16-0. I think both the offense and the defense started to work in harmony, and that's when you saw that team come together. And again, this week here in week 1 against Houston Christian, you saw more of the same of that fourth quarter against Nevada.
Talking with Dean Ralsky on the Pony Express, part of the On3 network, getting you an insider look at the SMU Mustangs. And did the Houston Christian performance silence any concerns from week 0, or was it just simply looked at as it's an FCS team? We'll really get a real barometer this Friday against BYU?
I think SMU fans needed to see that performance against Houston Christian to sort of understand that this team still has the talent to compete at this level. But I think there are still some questions about the consistency and how often college football fans, will see SMU play at such a high level. And we'll get to see that on Friday night when they take on BYU.
I'm curious, Dean, to get your thoughts on the SMU quarterback situation. Rhett Lashley said on Tuesday that BYU should plan for both quarterbacks, and Preston Stone, Kevin Jennings it seems like Stone's playing drives 1 and 2, and then Jennings 3 and 4, and then Stone kind of takes off from there, and maybe more interchanging in the last game because of the opponent. But what do you make of the quarterback situation, and what should we expect to see on Friday?
I think you're right for the most part there. As you said, Preston Stone has gotten the first 2 drives in the first 2 games, and then Kevin Jennings gets the next 2. And then it kind of flows from there. Against Nevada, they stuck with Preston Stone after drives 3 and 4. And although it didn't quite work right away, you saw in the third and fourth quarter, Stone got into a rhythm and ultimately led SMU to the win in week 0. And then to your point, after those first 4 drives, SMU was already up big. And so you saw a little bit more of Preston Stone and then more of Kevin Jennings. So it still remains to be seen what we'll see from Coach Rhett Lashley and his decisions this coming Friday. But I think definitely you'll plan to see both, and maybe it'll be an even more mix between the two.
Who's the better runner between the two?
Kevin Jennings. Preston Stone is mobile and can move around in the pocket, no doubt, but Kevin Jennings is definitely the better natural runner.
Well, and I asked that because last week BYU gave up 121 yards on the ground to Southern Illinois quarterbacks, so it kind of makes me think that maybe it could create an opportunity more for Jennings to play more.
Yeah, we'll have to see again what Coach Lashley thinks. He'll be looking at the BYU defense. And I think, as he said in the press conference, Preston Stone is still the starter. But as the game progresses, if Coach Lashley feels that Kevin Jennings, is a better fit for going against this BYU defense, you will see Kevin Jennings play more than Preston Stone. It's as simple as that.
Beyond the quarterback position, who are the key playmakers for this SMU team?
Well, you mentioned the running game. Transfer from Miami, Brashard Smith. He was someone who was an All-American returner for Miami last year and actually played in the slot at wide receiver for the Hurricanes. But he has come into SMU as really a late addition in the transfer portal, and he has taken over that starting running back spot right away. He was one of the few bright spots for SMU against Nevada, averaging over 6 yards a carry. And then against Houston Christian, he looked even more dangerous, scoring 2 touchdowns and rushing for over 100 yards. So he is one that is very dangerous in the ground game, but also has that experience at receiver, so can catch the ball out of the backfield. And then R.J. Maryland, who had a really good game against Nevada, especially the second half, where him and Preston Stone really got into a rhythm. SMU did not have a receiver go over 100 receiving yards at all in 2023 in a single game. And in week 0 there, you saw R.J. Maryland eclipse that 100-yard mark in the first game of the season. And so he is someone that whoever is that quarterback, they can rely on R.J. Maryland to make plays.
Who's the top guy or two on defense that we should be aware of?
On defense, Elijah Roberts, who has had a slow start to the year. He was an all-AAC second-team defensive lineman last year for SMU, and he will feel snubbed. He believed he was a first-teamer last year. And so I think these first 2 weeks, both teams, Nevada and Houston Christian, have poured a lot of attention onto him. He's only got 1 tackle in the first 2 games, but he has the potential and he has the talent to make plays. And then this linebacker group, Ahmad Walker is the senior linebacker they got from Liberty in the transfer portal last year, and he is just everywhere. He's making plays, stopping the run especially. He is one to watch. And then senior safety Jonathan McGill, who also was at SMU last year, but before that was at Stanford and played at Stanford, but wanted to come back home where he's from, where he played his high school ball in Dallas. And so Jonathan McGill is a great leader on that defense.
That's good insight. I'm curious too, Dean, with Rhett Lashley in his press conference, he noted some personnel when asked. He said, Moochie, back spasms, Rooster, LJ. Can you fill us in on the actual names, or are those all nicknames?
Yes. So Moochie Dixon is a wide receiver for SMU. He's been here a while, and SMU has a lot of upperclassmen and experience in that wide receiver room, and Moochie Dixon is one of those players. So I can't give you one exact name about who a receiver to look out for is. He is one of them. Jordan Hudson, Romello Brinson is a name, a transfer from Miami 2 years ago. And then Rooster is yet another transfer from Miami, sensing a theme here. He's a running back who we did not see very much of against Nevada, and then at all against Houston Christian. We were told that he could have gone against Houston Christian, but the team decided if they don't need him, they were not going to play him, so they did not. So I'd expect both to play at this point at some capacity. And yeah, overall, this team is pretty healthy, knock on wood.
So what are you expecting maybe is the area that of concern that you feel like BYU could maybe attack against SMU? What are your feelings right now as we're getting a few days till kickoff?
Yeah, so I would say the offensive line. The offensive line did not look great against Nevada. And again, there are a lot of new faces on this offensive line, so it will take time for them to play better together. But I think that is out of all the positions on offense, that is one to worry about for SMU right now. They've got Andrew Chamblee, who was an all-SEC freshman at Arkansas, and he was banged up, did not play against Nevada, played one series against Houston Christian, so they're hoping to have him back and think they will have him back for BYU, so that would be a big addition. And then on the defensive side, it would be the cornerback position. They tried really all summer, all offseason in the transfer portal to bring in a corner. It didn't work out, and so they've had to just rely on what they have. And so far, it's been okay. They've done well at the cornerback position, but it's certainly an area where there are still some question marks.
Going back to the offensive line, did they change things up with that starting five against Houston Christian? Did they try out a different lineup?
Yes. So they had in week 0 against Nevada, Justin Osborne, who has just been the leader of this offensive line for years. They tried him out at center against Nevada, and it just did not work very well. And so against Houston Christian, they bumped him out. And so far in practice this week, it's looked similar where they bumped him out to right tackle where he's played before. And then they had Ja'Kai Clark, who was yet again another transfer from Miami. He played center at Miami at his time in Coral Gables. And when he came to SMU, he's been playing a lot of guard, but he has the experience at center. And so last week they put him back at center, and the offensive line was more efficient. And I think you could expect to see that again against BYU this week.
Well, Dean, this is a great insight. I really appreciate the time. Folks, follow Dean on the ponyexpress.com, the SMU website on the On3 network. Great insight. He's on the ground covering all things SMU with Billy Embody, and really appreciate it, Dean, and looking forward to crossing paths in the press box on Friday, and looking forward to a good football game.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see you and watch this game in Dallas on Friday. Thank you for having me.
That's Dean Ralsky here on KSL News Radio and KSLSports.com. Thanks, Dean.